Welcome to LinesToGo installation videos. Today we will be removing and installing fuel lines on a 2010 Hyundai Elantra Touring using LinesToGo part number SS1302. While this particular installation is being performed on a 2010 Hyundai Elantra Touring, this set of lines will also fit the following year, make, and models as shown on your screen now. LinesToGo lines are made using original equipment end forms and fittings that are CNC bent for an easy and precise installation. We have also upgraded to stainless steel braided Teflon hoses for rust protection and to prevent surface fouling. These have an unlimited shelf life and anti-static PTFE liner. This set of LinesToGo lines are made using 304L stainless steel for rust resistance that exceeds OEM standards. Tech tip: disconnect the battery before working on a vehicle to reduce the risk of shorting out the battery on tools or lines. LinesToGo lines are made with a sectional design for easier installation. We also use color-coded unions on our sectioned lines. Just match the colors at the connections. Make sure to depressurize the fuel system before starting the installation. Tools required: 10mm, 12mm, and 21mm sockets and ratchet, 11mm, 12mm, and 13mm wrenches, cutting pliers, drain pan, jack and jack stands. The level of difficulty for this installation is considered to be easy. To depressurize the fuel system, locate the fuel pump fuse using your owner's manual and remove it. Start the vehicle and wait for the engine to stall. Make sure to replace the fuse once completed. Start by disconnecting the negative battery terminal by using a 10mm socket or wrench. Use a 10mm socket to remove the two bolts that secure the front of the intake air tube. Remove the intake air tube from the front of the air filter housing. Next, carefully lift up on the locking levers that secure the electrical connectors at the engine control module to remove them. Use a 10mm socket to loosen the clamp that secures the intake air tube at the rear of the air filter housing and disconnect it from the housing. Use a 10mm socket to remove the two bolts that secure the air filter housing to the vehicle. Lift up on the housing to remove it and the ECM from the vehicle. Next, use a pair of pliers to remove the clamp that secures the PCV tube to the intake air tube and disconnect it. Use a 10mm socket to loosen the clamp that secures the intake air tube to the throttle body and remove the intake air tube from the vehicle. At the rear of the engine, use a flat blade screwdriver or pick to open the plastic clip that secures the fuel lines. Use a pair of pliers to remove the spring clamp on the vent hose and remove the hose from the line. Use a 14mm and a 19mm wrench to remove the threaded fitting from the supply hose at the rear of the engine. Alternatively, you can cut the line close to the fitting using a pair of cutting pliers and use a wrench and socket to remove the fitting after. Raise and support the vehicle. Next, we will need to use a 10mm socket to remove the clamp that secures the brake and fuel lines above the rear of the front subframe. We found it easiest to access this nut by reaching between the transmission and the rear of the front subframe. Use a 12mm socket to remove the bolt that secures the left rear parking brake cable. Use a Phillips blade screwdriver to remove the plastic push clips that secure the plastic line cover. If the plastic screws do not turn out, you may need to pull them down using a small pick. You will need to be careful during the next few steps as disturbing the brake lines could result in a leak if they are not in good shape. Disconnect the plastic lower cover from the line mounting brackets and remove it from the vehicle. Use a flat blade screwdriver to open the plastic clips that secure the brake and fuel lines. Next, we will need to raise or remove the lower rear seat cushion. Use a 12mm socket to remove the 2 bolts at the front of the seat that secure the rear seat cushion. Lift up on the front of the seat and either prop it up or remove it completely. Use a Phillips screwdriver to remove the 4 screws from the sending unit access hatch. Disconnect the 2 electrical connectors by depressing the plastic tabs. Disconnect the supply and vent line quick connect fittings by depressing the 2 plastic tabs. Next, underneath the vehicle, use a 14mm socket to remove the bolt that secures the driver's side fuel tank strap. You should place a support underneath the fuel tank to support the weight before removing the strap. However, one was not used here as the fuel tank was empty. Use a pair of cutting pliers to cut both fuel lines in front of the fuel tank. Remove the 2 forward sections of fuel lines from the vehicle. Use a screwdriver or pick to remove the 2 fuel lines from the clips located in front of the fuel tank. Doing this allows the removal and installation without requiring the removal of the fuel tank. Remove the 2 rear sections of lines from the vehicle. To begin the installation of your new stainless steel LinesToGo fuel lines, start by installing the rear section of vent line labeled VL1302B into position, routing it over the parking brake cable and over the front of the tank. Secure the line into the plastic clips. Connect the rear quick connect fitting to the nylon line through the access hatch. Next, install the rear section of the LinesToGo supply line labeled SL1302B into position, routing it over the parking brake cable and over the front of the fuel tank. Secure the line into the plastic clips. Connect the rear quick connect fitting into the steel line at the sending unit. Replace the 2 electrical connectors. Replace the access hatch and secure the 4 screws using a Phillips screwdriver. Replace the lower seat cushion back into position, making sure the seatbelt buckles are fed through the holes. Replace the 2 bolts that secure the seat cushion using a 12mm socket. Next, install the front section of the LinesToGo vent line labeled VL1302A into position, routing it over the rear of the front subframe. Connect the 2 sections of the vent line using the supplied hose, noting the LinesToGo color-coded connection. Next, install the front section of the LinesToGo supply line labeled SL1302A into position, routing it over the rear of the front subframe. Connect the 2 sections of the supply line by hand using the supplied union, noting the LinesToGo color-coded connection. Behind the engine, secure the 2 lines into the plastic retaining clip. Connect the vent tube and secure it using the existing spring clamp. Connect the supply hose to the line using the threaded fitting and tighten the fitting using a 14mm and a 19mm wrench. This connection will need to be quite tight. We found it easiest to tighten this connection from underneath the vehicle, reaching up between the rear of the engine and the subframe. Tighten the supply union using a 16mm and a 19mm wrench. Replace the rear intake air tube back into position. Reconnect the PCV tube to the intake air tube and replace the spring clamp using a pair of pliers. Tighten the band clamp at the throttle body using a 10mm socket. Replace the air filter housing back into position. Use a 10mm socket to tighten the two bolts that secure the air filter housing along with the intake air tube clamp. Replace the two electrical connectors at the ECM, making sure the lever is fully open before installing. Replace the forward intake air tube back into position. Secure the air tube using a 10mm socket. Replace the fuel tank strap and secure it using a 14mm socket. With the lines underneath the vehicle completely installed, replace the plastic cover and secure it into the line clips using the plastic tabs. Replace the plastic push clips along the cover. Replace the bolt that secures the parking brake cable and the rear of the line cover and tighten it using a 12mm socket. Replace the bracket at the rear of the front subframe and secure it using a 10mm socket. Reconnect the negative battery terminal and secure it using a 10mm socket. This concludes the installation of stainless steel fuel lines on a 2010 Hyundai Elantra Touring using LinesToGo part number SS1302. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions or would like to purchase the lines you saw today, please call us at 1-855-781-5992, email us at info@linestogo.com, or check out our website link below. Don't forget to take advantage of our free next day shipping. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button below, and we will see you in our next video.